Welcome back to the Northstar Politics Show. I'm Busayo Twins, and as I always say, everything is political. Or is it? This week, we discussed Labour's Workers' Rights Bill, political. Nigel Farage's racism and electoral fraud, political. The Democratic Republic of Congo's peace deal, political. Quarter zips, political. But Noah's beard? Now that's a personal problem. We discussed that and so much more. Let's get into it.
One time for the one time, two time for the two time. Welcome back, stars them. You are tapped in with Northstar Politics, pushing political imagination. You're right where you need to be. You're, of course, with myself, Noah East, on each and every platform. The Mile End Malcolm X. We didn't land on Bethnal Green. Bethnal Green landed on us. Different gravy, never lazy. It's always trying times when you're trying your best. And I am joined today by a political powerhouse, the Camden Claudia Jones, the empress of everything is political.
Wow.
Last name Twins, but she's one of one.
Come on.
Welcome, Busayo Twins.
I love that.
But.
I love that.
Busayo Twins, welcome to Northstar Politics.
Thank you for having me.
People at home that don't know, first of all, need to get to know. But tell them a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you for the intro. I like that. I like the respect. You know what I mean? I'm from Camden. I grew up there. Online, I do political commentary. I've got a series online called Everything is Political.
People, you need to tap into that one.
Yes.
Everything is political, yeah. I'd be thinking that all the time. Old school people are saying the private is political, besides you have to come through everything.
Everything's political because it is. Everything's about decision making, power, resource allocation. So everything is political. It has a political aspect to it. And so my intention with that was to allow people to know that everything they interact with has a political aspect, so they feel like they are political. I used to talk to bare people and they'll be like, oh, like, I'm not really political, I don't listen. I'm like, yes, you are.
Ignorant.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you are. And it's about creating an entry point for them. So the entry point might not be party politics. It might not even be genocide. Sometimes it's about how comes the price of my football ticket is higher than it was, or whatever it is. And it was like, yeah, see, that's political.
And we're going to get into that later. We're going to have a little game later where I try to throw stuff at you and you work out the politics in it. But I am so glad to have you here on Northstar Politics, Busayo. I'm even going to say this, your work is something I've always looked up to. Before, because you know this is my first time on camera with Northstar. I know. But I've been following for a long time.
And this is the first time you said this to me, so let's go.
No, but it's real though. As in, when I'm seeing you doing the show, the production value and everything is political, all that kind of stuff, people tap in. Busayo Twins on every platform.
Yes, sir.
Each and every platform.
Thank you.
Lovely stuff. Stars them, chat to me. It is lovely to be back on the mic and talking to you guys. I want you to keep commenting. This week has been a bit of a hectic week. Sean's clip went viral with him talking about Muslim versus Marxism. My clip, I got a bit of hate for the first time for my critique on your party.
Oh, is it?
Oh, also Busayo, welcome to Tower Hamlets.
Don't worry about that. I'm from Camden. We have this. This is light, man. There's only one. I've only heard one since I've been here.
And you know what it is? Yeah, the stars, they're used to it at this point.
Oh, okay, good.
At this point, if they don't hear the sirens, they get concerned.
Okay.
But we had a few things go viral this week and we had a lot of hotly contested conversation. And I just want to tell people, keep on commenting your opinion, especially on the YouTube, because over the Christmas period, or for Sean, the winter period for the Muslims amongst us, we're going to be looking at some of the best comments we've had over the first 10 episodes.
Nice.
And also, this is our 10th episode.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, you're celebrating with us. Come on.
I love it.
The other thing I want to say is all of our listeners right now, all the stars them, me, personal passion project, I'm a geography man. Comment where you're listening from.
Okay, is that what you studied at uni?
I didn't study
So A-level?
Famously, PPE.
But you're so different.
Not even A-level. I didn't even do it for GCSE.
So where did you get the geography
I just love like the capitals of the world and the flags and all the how many countries below the equator and all that kind of stuff.
Have you played Sporkle?
It's me and Sporkle, we got it deeper.
Sporkle's mad.
I got a season ticket on Sporkle.
Stop.
Yeah, come on now. Sporkle, what, COVID?
Yeah.
I can imagine Sporkle, isolation. There I was.
I love it.
But yeah, I want everyone in the stars them to be commenting where you're from. And if we're getting 4,000 listens this week, I need to see 4,000 comments. Obviously, we don't need addresses and postcodes, but just shout out your area. How's your week been?
My week, it's only just started, so it's not much. But I know the week.
You're on that Christian Sunday's the start of the week thing.
Well.
But the past 7 days.
Yeah. I'm on the whole, like, it used to be 8 months in the year. Now it's gone to 12. That's what I'm on the thingy calendar.
Wait, when did that happen?
Who was it? Like, was it
George Bush?
Caesar or Augustus?
Oh, back in the day.
Back in the days.
Not even today yet, but obviously Busayo, people don't know, Busayo's my OG. So I wasn't around them times when they changed the calendars.
Oh, is it? So, okay, when
Caesar
did you enter? When did you enter your consciousness?
I'm 9/11 times.
That's when you knew the world around you. Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was only been 12 months for me.
Fair enough.
But when you were young, it was 8 months, fair play.
Fair enough.
We've got some big topics to get into today. And you got a hot let me land for the people then.
Yes.
Should we get started?
Let's go.
Let's get into it. Welcome to the State of Play. Busayo, you're familiar with the show, but for the people that are new-time listeners, the State of Play is where we discuss the headline topics, the things that have been seizing the headlines in the news, and we sort of give our opinion on it and give a little bit of a breakdown. The first thing I want to talk about is I feel like Labour are doing something quite nice. They've got an employment rights bill that's being introduced and being lobbied in Parliament, which for me has some quite beneficial aspects to it. So some of them. Increased protection for unfair dismissals. So Labour in their manifesto pledge said that from day one there would be increased protection for unfair dismissals. It's gone back and forth between the Commons and the Lords, and it's kind of been watered down to a 6-month period, but still that's an increase from the 2-year period from the Cameron years. Increased protections around parental leave and sick pay. Paternity and ordinary parental leave becomes day one rights for anyone. Statutory sick pay eligibility would also ease. So sick pay from your first day of illness and a removal of the lower earnings limit if you're taking sick pay. Greater trade union rights and collective bargaining. Bit of a shocker, but Labour Party acted as a Labour Party. So the bill would make it easier for unions to gain recognition, allow electronic ballots, and require employers themselves to inform employees about their rights to join a union. And then finally, tighter restrictions on precarious work. So the bill will target exploitative 0-hours contracts, the fire and rehire practices, and aims to strengthen protections for agency or gig workers by extending the rights to single worker status. Northstar politics. We've often been the most fervent critics of the Labour Party. This seems pretty decent, though.
To you, it seems decent. You think objectively it's decent?
I'm thinking, you know what it is? I want to be able to call it good when I see it good.
Yeah, I think it's important.
And this seems like a step in the right direction. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a step in the right direction. Unfortunately, we need a leap. And I think that's where we are with Labour, isn't it? It's mostly like, this needs to be praised for what it is, as you said. It's better than what it's been. But at the same time, for what we thought it was going to be, obviously it's fallen short. And again, if you're somebody who believes that all these things should have existed anyway, this is nothing really. It's just, you're just doing your job. So we have to think between, are we clapping for a fish for swimming? Or is it saying we actually know the times we're in and a little goes a long way?
Yeah, so, I agree with what you're saying. And I sometimes struggle in my sort of political commentary to think to myself, should I give credit for the marginal improvements or should I just stand firm and like, no, we need that leap? Do you know what I mean? That sort of trade-off.
Yeah. It's hard, especially now because it feels like the political class bank on us just being grateful. And we don't want them to feel like we're just grateful and we take the crumbs, just like we know with capitalism, it's a trickle-down effect. And we could be here all year. We could be here all generation. And we need to, I think personally it's important for us to always be loud about how unhappy we are, because it makes it more of an urgent cause. If you're just satisfied, they'll think we've done it and they'll move on. So for me, I think it's just important to be like, yeah, cool, but keep going. And you watered it down. So can we keep going? And what is the timeline for when things are going to be implemented? And are you going to stick by your word? So I think that's what it is.
I think there's also something interesting to be said about the sort of fragmentation of the UK Labour community. Of the workers' community, because there's such different industries going on that people are a part of. That sort of identity as a labourer, as a worker, has sort of been lost.
Yeah.
So my friend recently, he works for one of these sort of transport subdivision agencies, no longer just TfL, but I'm not going to name the company. But he basically works like on the buses, and he had a recent problem at work where there was like probation being extended and basically keeping him in a precarious situation. And then he finally realised through one of his colleagues at work that he should get in touch with the union. And from there, he was just absolutely stunned by how supportive the union were, ringing him on the weekend, preparing legal files, all these sorts of things. And, you know, he's a young man, a university graduate, but he just wasn't aware of this unionization that was possible for him. And I just think when I look at a lot of my peers, you know, 20-somethings that are in the workplace, maybe because they're part of different industries that are seen as more modern industries, you know, you're not heading down the mines, they're just not aware of the power in unionization. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I don't think when you're getting a job, at least for our generation, anyone talks about how important it is to be part of a union and how much they support you, not even just in your role, but reminding you you're part of a wider, you know, community of people who can actually change things. And as you mentioned, like the gig economy, 0-hour contracts, it makes it hard for us to feel like we are part of something bigger than just our individual role. We go in, we go out. It doesn't feel like it's part of identity. I think before, especially when you're reading all the books, the economic books, the political books, being a worker feels like, in my head, you've got a million man behind you.
Yeah, it's a thing.
It's
actually a thing.
Yeah. Right now, I feel like, especially with remote work. Listen, it's me and that Samsung laptop or the Apple laptop, and it's...
Oh, so you're coming like the head of like Blackstone. You're telling man, get back in the office.
No, I don't think get back...
Is that what you're on?
Do you want to do a disclaimer? Yeah. I thought so. No, I don't think people need to get back into the office for other reasons. But I do think when they told us to stay home, or when we had to stay home because of COVID, we didn't actually realize everything else that we are part of when you're an employee. And I think now we're starting to like realize that actually it did serve a purpose, being very visible and being more connected to what happens in your workplace.
I agree.
So yeah, I think things need to evolve with that. It's not just about not coming in, it's also other things.
It's interesting because, and you know, Sean's away, so like I have licenses, take it philosophical early doors. Normally he's the one that reins it back in. But I think about like the importance of labour, and is, you know, somewhat very much well in tune with Marxist philosophy. The importance of labour to the human spirit, the importance of, you know, manually crafting things, even if not literally, but just productivity. And when we look at the development of sort of capitalist thinking in our society and the ideologies that have fermented in our society around like professional life, I think they're so detrimental to the human spirit. So for example, the idea of, you've heard of this idea of like a portfolio career. The idea that, oh, we should take pride in the fact that, you know, maybe my mum, she got her job out of uni and stayed in it for 40 years, but no, we're going to be dynamic.
1 year, 2 year.
Exactly. And all this sort of literature and language around dynamism in the workplace, when you really peel it back, it's like, does it actually benefit the employee, like fundamentally? Does it actually benefit the labourer in their identity as a worker? It kind of detracts from the idea of being a worker, and now you're just sort of a multifaceted node in a wider machine. You know what I mean? And we talk about the precariousness of the gig economy, that's quite explicit. But we think about these ideas of like a portfolio career and people jumping from job to job. It's kind of the same thing, but just under a different guise.
Yeah, no, 100%. I do think it's interesting. I think, you know, it's sometimes you have to live your life in the context of a generation to appreciate the things that happened before. And I think sometimes we throw the baby out of the bathwater, and we understand that, as you said, there's so much more to having a long-term career and all that kind of stuff. But equally, you know, people are giving us shorter contracts. No one's having 10-year contracts here. And work isn't as fulfilling. So when you talk about...
Talk on that, because I was going to ask you, how do we make work
fulfilling?
valuable, or just some dignity in work? Is that an imagined history? That there was like dignity in work and you had an identity? Am I imagining that?
No, I don't think I'm imagining it. I think it's obviously back in the day. Not to go too far, because I know you weren't here.
I wasn't around.
So when we were here in nursery school, what I remember adults saying was that you were a lot more, the physicality of work made it more intimate.
Okay.
So it's the whole idea of brick and mortar, the value of it, not just the fact that you have whatever's happening internally, the systems, but the physicality of it. You have memories there. You can touch it. Everything that's physical, if you work the land, it makes you feel like you're actually, you know, it's just that intimacy.
So the information economy has kind of killed the vibes.
The information economy has killed the vibes of it, because now you feel detached from it physically. And what comes after physical detachment? A mental, emotional detachment. Now, I'm now working for somebody just to get in and get out for money.
The word I'm hearing here, fundamental Marxism, alienation.
You're trying to put the Marxism.
We'll get into the Marxism later, because Sean was getting fried.
I know. You're trying to. I know this is the agenda.
We're just tiptoeing around it. We'll get into that later.
Decolonize Marxism.
Exactly. But I'm just thinking as well, there's lack of dignity in work. So there's a physical aspect to it as well, and a community aspect to it. Even if you're not, you know, working with your hands, perhaps you're attending an office space, but also a dignity in work, whereby the immiseration of the masses, whether it be the cost of living crisis or like the rentier economy we live in, means that the work you do no longer provides you with a dignified way of life. So you have less respect for the work you're doing. Nowadays, you see people sort of begrudgingly just describe work as something they hate. They just have to do it to survive. Whereas before it was like, well, this work, whether or not I'm like passionate about being like an accountant, or it actually provides me with a very good quality of life. I can support a family of however many, go on a couple holidays a year. So that loss of dignity in your life and the dignity that your livelihood would provide feels like a big problem as well. Yeah,
exactly. I think as you basically you said, I think now we're working for money to then go and find us happiness using the money. Before, work in itself could be fulfilling. And you see that with like the kind of old days tension between like the 9 to 5 versus the creative kind of narrative, which is, apart from the fact that there's some sort of freedom there, it's also the idea of I'm doing something I'm passionate about. And with the technological revolution, the idea was that you're supposed to do the jobs that we don't want to do, so we can progress society in knowledge, creativity, all that good stuff. And we're just not doing it. No, and you're not making jobs that feel fulfilling. So
I think that, but it's also important for people just to be so aware. Look into getting involved in unions. Unions are only as powerful as their members. And even say on this example, the watering down of the bill from day one workers' rights to 6 months, the unions have stood up in furiosity about this, calling it a betrayal of the red wall and really hammering down Labour's door. And oftentimes we express problems on Northstar politics and people at home think, what can I do? A big part of it is collective bargaining. Because you yourself might not be able to do it. If you think about what democracy is every 4 years, you can actually act democratically every single day in your activity as a union member, as parts of tenants unions, these sorts of things. So people at home, you got to get involved.
On that though,
chat to me.
I think also the relationship that some ethnic minorities might have, or some marginalized communities might have with trade unions isn't as straightforward as I'm a worker, especially if there's been a history or just maybe an assumption that these are white spaces or spaces for certain people of a certain age or, as we said, certain demographic. So we should join unions, but because also we need to transform the union space as well, and so they care about the things that other people care about as well. So I would say, I don't think it's just the fact that we're not going to trade unions because of the changing nature of work. I think it's also another group that marginalized people have to expose themselves to that actually might not be as welcoming in theory or in practice.
No, very true. And I think there's a word that gets bandied around a lot, which really to unpack the substantive force of it, which is intersectional. You know, and people need to be reminded it's not just a sort of a laissez-faire word we just use, it needs to be intersectional, which means we need to have different colours involved. No, we actually need to recognise the material interests of people that are racialised in a different way in our society. So I very much agree. It's not just about being unionised as a worker, but also being unionised as a black worker who might experience different material sort of impoverishment in that sense.
Exactly.
Can I ask you a question for our next topic?
Yes, sir.
What were you chatting about in school days?
What was I chatting about?
Yeah, no internet these times. Well, let me not even say that. Not no internet, but like not a social media era. You could have been chatting the madness.
Yeah.
But what you saying? Some of the things Nigel Farage was saying.
I wasn't doing that.
So Nigel Farage recently been in the news. Yeah, people at home would have seen.
He wasn't doing
Nigel Farage. Yeah, and bearing in mind, Nigel Farage way older than us.
Yeah.
He was actually living close to the times that these things happen.
Yeah.
He's there talking about rating Hitler's thing. He's happy about tell people to go home. Racial comments around everyone. And I think something like a couple dozen people have come out saying that Nigel Farage was on a madness in school. And I kind of don't care.
Go on.
I think this has been a bit of a distraction mechanism. And I'm also very skeptical about why this has come up now. Nigel Farage has been like sort of a bombastic, bigoted figure in public discourse for going on 30 years now. And for it to come up now, I'm just a bit suspicious. And also, I think it's a bit of a distraction mechanism or a bit of a red herring or a false flag, because you're going to have his support base come out and say, here's irrelevant, here's not serious, and sort of reinvigorate their support for him. When in fact, the critique should always and really is found in the things he's saying right now. Yeah,
it does. And I think that's what the reasonable defense of this narrative is that of all the things that our politicians have done and said, this is in line with what they've been doing. The shock factor has gone, both with who Nigel Farage has, what he said now and who he currently is, but also what the political class has done. But then also, it's kind of like the one reason why this narrative is interesting for me, this discourse is interesting, because now black people, ethnic minorities are not in the conversation. And when it comes to this anti-Semitism conversation particularly, the distraction is you can close that conversation down because the person's Muslim or the person's this or person's that. Now, for me, it's like, show us how much care you're going to handle this conversation. If it means that much to you, go on. Go and challenge this, because when we were talking about anti-Semitism before, you didn't want to answer it. And now because it's Nigel Farage, you want us to, all of a sudden, all be for it. But you're right. It's not an interesting conversation to us, not because we don't care. We have been very vocal about how much there is anti-Semitism. But you're now using it. It seems very like opportunist.
Yeah, it's funny you say that they're using
anti-Semitism.
Because it's kind of like they're using it on the other side of the spectrum. If it was a bit opportunistic. Have you read Ash Sarkar's recent book?
Minority Rule.
Yeah.
I haven't read it, no.
It's an interesting book, and it's kind of branded as like there's the end of cancel culture for left wing. We need to get rid of the idea of cancel culture identity politics. And I think there is something to be said about that when we look at this, is like this kind of tactic levied against like a mainstream political figure, sort of what year are we in now? Let's say 7 years ago, would have been really effective. Would have probably spelled the end for Nigel Farage. But nowadays it feels like, and somewhat rightfully so, that sort of bringing up things you said 40 years ago has lost its sort of heat. And I guess the question I want to ask you is this, is like, should it matter that he was racist 50 years ago? That he was racist in secondary school? Should it matter? And should we still be bringing these things up? Like, is it useful to be bringing these things up? Is it informative?
Yeah, just to be clear, I genuinely feel like it's important that I think it's important that it's brought up that he's racist, because if you're racist, it's wrong. It doesn't matter that we've got this whole fatigue politically, because that's how we then start accepting rubbish. He was racist. But to people who have been on the other side of racism or being the victims, this is not news to us. When this is in the news every time and nothing happens. What I think is that all it shows is that this is a pattern of behavior. This is who he is. Whereas normally when it comes out, that person has rebranded. When you rebrand or dissociate from that, that's when the past becomes like, are you just trying to bring that person down? Do you know what I'm saying? If you are really pro-LGBT rights now, you've done so much work for 20 years, for example, but they found a tweet 30 years ago, then there's that more of a conversation about, okay, are you a careerist? Have you really changed? Like, how can we trust you if you're in position?
It feels like everyone has tweets about black women. Do you know what I mean?
So this is what I'm saying. As a black woman sitting here, these conversations about racism and stuff for me, it's like, well...
No, I agree.
Again, you know...
It's also worth noting that there was actually a serious problem with Nigel Farage this week, which is he basically under investigation for breaching electoral rules. As me and Sean have said, there's no money in UK politics, and it's so tight with what you can spend. But Farage's party actually sent targeted digital ads during the regulated campaign period without properly logging the spending. Yeah. So basically, they're looking at about £9,000 worth of overspending, which is quite a lot in the grand scheme of things for UK politics. And that is probably the more serious issue that he is facing right now. On the semantics and people saying things and how much we should hold on to what they said, did you see Zach Polanski on Question Time?
I watched some of it. I didn't watch all of it.
So Zach Polanski was on Question Time recently. We're big fans of Zach Polanski.
Yeah.
Love the guy.
Shout out Zach.
But he actually said he sort of made a misstep, I would say, in what his general discourse has been around immigrants. And he made sort of the archaic point that one of the big reasons we need immigration in the UK is because there's certain jobs that UK people fundamentally don't want to do.
This is the carers.
Yeah. Yes. And he said, for example, a lot of immigrants work in the care system and, they wipe people's bums. He's like, I don't know about you, but I don't want to wipe people's bums. And, fair enough, Zach, like I'm in your boat. I also don't want to wipe people's bums. But I think that sort of binary framing of it as a job for sort of racialized as darker skinned people that are migrating the country versus you who you don't want to do it, so they'll do it for me. That's a bit problematic. I want to ask you what you thought about that initially, but also sort of tying it into the Nigel Farage thing. How much weight should we be giving people's words at every single point rather than giving them space to be flexible?
It's hard because I'm somebody who... It depends. If your rhetoric is always racism and all that kind of stuff, there's nothing you really need to come and contextualize. You don't need to squint and try and see, you kind of know what they're saying. If somebody is just not articulate, and I think that's a big thing. I think some people are not articulate. It's really difficult. I know you and Sean got it smashed on here. You guys can say everything. But a lot of people, they find it difficult to think and talk at the same time, to think about, okay, who my audience is right here versus who's outside looking at me. And then that clip could be used in a different context. So I think it's hard. I think it's always going to be a bias towards who you like.
And then also, I guess, because when we think about like Northstar politics' goal, a big part is like, we actually think within a deliberative democracy, we should be able to make mistakes and then like work it out again. But then it's also hard to work out, where do we draw the line on that? If someone comes out and it's like, I don't know, obviously not Tommy Robinson, but we think someone a bit closer to the pale, let's say Robert Jenrick, who's made horrible statements about like people in Birmingham and like, people are taking over the city and there's no-go zones in Tower Hamlets, which we're sat in right now. If someone like that was to say, I've kind of done my Googles and I spoke to the stakeholders and now I'm kind of, I'm on team sort of multicultural or whatever it might be, do we allow him into the fold? Like, we obviously want to have an ability for rehabilitation and changing of views, but is there a clear defined spectrum where that can take place in? I
think it's always the people you insult will determine whether they forgive you, and that group is not homogenous. So there'll be some people who, as for me, I might be more someone who's like, you know what, if you've proven somehow based on my idea of what you've proved to be, fair enough, but at a distance. I'm not going to put you anywhere where I'm not going to try and now back you and be like, oh my God, I really love you. It's just going to be like, you know what, cool, I heard you. I might repost one of your things in isolation, but put a disclaimer and go, I don't support everything. Whereas other things, I think sometimes people who say sorry or want to be forgiven, they now make it our problem that we must rush into forgiveness. If like to disprove, to show us that you're no longer racist, is not something you can do through Googles. It's not something you can just say sorry. It's not like that, because the pain that you've inflicted, number one, has lasted so long. How do we know what your incentive is, especially if you're an adult? The child tweets seem slightly different because at that age you can say head is still soft, haven't grown up. Do you know what I mean? But as an adult, if you're 30, 40 plus and you're saying some mad things.
I get what you're saying. I also think, is there space to just say, I misspoke?
I'm sorry.
Is there space for that?
No.
There's not?
No, there should be.
Okay.
But we haven't created space.
No, it's true. I think in our political environment,
we haven't created space.
This is why I think it's a problem for people at home, why we need to stop being so zero-sum with our politicians, because it's that sort of structure we've set up whereby you can't make a mistake that will then have politicians going on to Sunday Politics Live, whatever interview show it might be, and literally just giving non-answers all the time, because they're aware that they have no slack can be cut for them, that anything they say wrong is they're gonna get taken to the bank for it. They don't want to say anything. And I think to engender a more discursive and deliberative politics, we actually need to give people the scope to say, I misspoke there, I was wrong about that, and I'm not going to be held to that in the same way as if everything I said was concrete and the paint was dry, or the ink was dry. You know what I mean?
Just show you're working out though. My thing is that show you're working out. So how did you get from you were so sure to now you're opposed to it?
Exactly.
Show you're working out. That's fine. And I always say that but the issue is it's not going to be Nigel Farage that makes me want to open that conversation about forgiveness. I think it's just the wrong person.
I think an interesting one is last week we spoke about Andy Burnham.
Yeah.
And obviously he was very tied in with Keir Starmer a lot for a while, and he was very much like a backbench Labour MP. But now with his sort of development into sort of a bit of a social democrat with Manchesterism, it seems like a natural development.
Yeah.
And that makes more sense to me.
It makes more sense, but also the other angle is that you could also argue that Labour changed. Or went too far. So a lot of the people that we kind of like now, it's not because you've done some internal soul searching, it's just that you found your red line. Okay. Or the Labour Party that you identified with, you no longer identify with them. Yeah. But because we need the crumbs, we're like, oh my God, you're better than rubbish. So I think there's also so many things happening at the same time. It's not just the person changing, it's also the context. Think about the Conservative Party. A lot of them, we went from the Rory Stewarts where people kind of I don't really mind you, to the Kemi Badenochs and all that stuff, and that's still one party.
We're going to get into it later, but Rory Stewart, I used to be a fan, but I think we'll get into it later. We'll get into it later because you've taken us down a lane I didn't want to be in. But our final topic for the state of play is taking us further afield, and we're going to talk about what is a very important bit of neo-colonial policy, where people be aware, you maybe see it all the time, even if you're not that informed, about there being problems in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Largely to do with minerals and mining and the use of child labour, and there's also been heavily contested mining resources in eastern Congo between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda, where there's been militants involved, armed militants basically fighting over access to different mining fields to then help export to potential buyers around the globe. And there was a deal struck this summer, which has then been ratified in early December. So after decades of conflict in the DRC with many armed groups, including quite famously the M23, which captured cities such as Goma, there's been the ratification of a deal where the leaders of the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda, under the sort of the guidance or the summit of the US President Donald Trump in Washington, have agreed to a ceasefire deal, which would allow both access to certain mining fields in eastern Congo, but more pivotally, really brings the US in an institutional way, where the US has secured itself levels of investment that over the years will get towards $1 billion, where US companies Donald Trump said himself, we're going to make a lot of money. US companies are going to make a lot of money here. And it seems like it's a part of a wider American strategy to, one, de-risk from China, but also cement their infrastructural investments in the global south, let's say. Some of the reasons why it's controversial, not many Congolese stakeholders involved. It was very much a deal that was drawn up and then presented to them. It will allow Rwanda, which doesn't actually have much of a meaningful ability to produce minerals, ability to legally export Congolese tin, tungsten, tantalum, and gold. So if you think about this, it's kind of counterintuitive. We know Rwanda cannot or doesn't have access to these minerals within their nation state, but we're allowing them legal access to export them. But where are they getting them from? They're going to carry on basically infringing on sovereignty of Congo in the eastern Congo region. And the US has managed to secure a lot of mineral rights in Congo for facilitating this agreement, according to President Trump. The US-based Cobalt Metals, a mining company backed by billionaires such as Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, has been granted 7 permits to explore lithium used in electrical vehicle batteries and other Congolese minerals. That's that same Bill Gates who we thought was going to solve the water crisis, but see that he's got his eyes on other minerals. Initial thoughts?
It's exactly what you said, isn't it? It's just... it comes to a point where it feels like speculation, especially when you read about it, especially if you're familiar with America's foreign policy to other people's conspiracy theory. But eventually they demonstrate exactly what we think. It's what you said. It's the new Cold War with China. And China's way has always been more like infrastructure loans, long-term loans, building railways in exchange for the minerals. America's way has always been more aggressive. It's security. And Congo has been devastated by genocide in general, the fighting, as you said, with the M23 and Rwanda, and just other, child soldiers, all that kind of stuff that also the global south.
And even destabilizing its first independent presidency with Patrice Lumumba.
Exactly. It's never recovered from that. And it's always been a target. So for all those reasons, it's unfortunate that they are in a position where it's desperation. It's a desperation. Even did you see the image of when they signed the Washington Accords? Yeah. I think the president of Congo's book was closed, and he was just not happy. Yeah. Rwanda was all smiling. Trump was like, he closes.
But it is Trump politics. It's
just
very
his
much strong arm. We saw this with the
politics.
Ukraine deal recently. We saw this with the Palestine and Gaza deal. It's a very much strong arm, what we'd call in international relations realism.
Yeah.
Whoever has most power wins. And even if the US has no sort of justifiable stake in whether it be Ukraine or Gaza, we're very powerful. If we can weasel our way in, then that is justified based on our power.
But it also bullies. So there's power, but there's way you choose power. And I think it's very specific that America needs those rare earth materials. Is realize that all the technological things you're talking about, all the shiny stuff, you don't even own the minerals to kind of fuel that. So you're now aggressively going into Africa, understanding what's happening there, and then trying to it's moved its attention.
And one thing I'll say is, there's a phrase that I'm going to contrast two Tinas.
Okay.
So we have the Tina of sort of neoliberalism, Reagan and Thatcher, which is there is no alternative.
Okay.
That there is no alternative to sort of the neoliberal world order and modern capitalism. And this phrase, Mark Fisher, a brilliant writer who has the idea of capitalist realism, basically says, for a lot of people, it's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism.
Yeah.
This idea, there is no alternative.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, we have the brilliant album by Fuse ODG, Tina. This is New Africa.
Yeah.
£1 million girl, you know what I mean?
You just want us to sing it. Just sing it. You didn't need the intro.
No, you have to tell me twice. But I often think that Africa, more than any other part of the global south, seems to, historically, especially over the past 60 years, post-World War II, have been the locus of these two ideas of Tina fighting. The idea that there is a hopeful future and we can do things differently, be it nationalization of public infrastructure, be it unionization of African countries. If we look at Lumumba, Sankara, even, but not Mandela, there's something else to be said, but even Gaddafi, these sorts of people. And on the other hand, constantly undermined, whether it be through the current deal we're seeing, whether it be through assassinations, whether it be through UAE-funded civil wars in Sudan, to sort of re-impress the idea there is no alternative. You will carry on being the vassal states for neo-colonialism. As Fanon would say, you will not export finished materials, you will carry on exporting raw materials and then buy back the finished products from us, the metropolises, the colonial metropolises. And, I'm maybe less close to the situation because I'm from the Caribbean, but it just seems like there's a perpetual problem with Africa, and I, depressingly, have no idea how we get past that.
Well, since, obviously, when you were getting robbed on the way from school when I was in uni.
Yeah, come on. Can I get my
what was
stuff
that-
back, please? If you're listening now, the man that mugged me, can I get my stuff back?
Well, it's age-old thing is that one word they always use for Africa, like they probably used for us in school, was that you have potential. It's always been that. Africa's always been the future. Every year, every election, it's always that if we just harness our raw materials, we'll be able to X, Y, Z. But there's two parts to this. There is the mismanagement, the corruption, the legacies of colonialism that has just made it. Africa represents just how bad colonialism and slavery was. I think people don't understand. I think people genuinely feel like it's just about, it's about not capital R, but reform. It's just about a good person coming in and changing things. No, this is a continent that was more or less destroyed, right, by imperialism, whichever type of imperialism. You can name whichever power has done it, imperialism. This is why the problem is so hard to fix, number one. But number two, there's an active intention to destabilize Africa. Africa is not trying. Don't get me wrong, we've got obviously a political class that is corrupt and, have sided with, a lot of what America's doing, Europe is doing. We get that. But people are trying to rise up and then people go missing. There are coups that happen.
On that point, people, that word corruption, people say it a lot, but I just want to colour in what that even looks like and what the alternative to corruption is. So we talk about this ability for Africa to export its raw materials or to use its raw materials. And what often happens is when someone has sort of leverage or access to a certain section of value, the raw materials, the corrupt mindset is to appropriate for your own goods rather than for the goods of the nation. And if we look at someone like Thomas Sankara, probably my personal hero, Thomas Sankara became president of the Republic of the Upper Volta, which was under French colonial control, then gained independence. And his whole idea was, we need to be upright people. We need to be able to stand on our own 2 feet. So he rejected any sort of international aid that was attached to access to raw materials or attached to access or influence of the country. So if you want to give it freely and there's no strings attached, that's fine. But any sort of IMF or World Trade Bank or any sort of like French loans that are attached to influence, no thank you. We're going to stand on our own. He had crazy achievements. I've written about this before. He had crazy achievements in terms of like women's literacy, bringing women to the government, reducing government officials' pay. And he also renamed the country in the common tongue to the land of the upright people, or Burkina Faso. Naturally, as you're describing, these sorts of people that actually are in the interest of Africa, these are not in the interest of people that would seek to exploit Africa. So a French-supported coup from, I think, Cote d'Ivoire ended up killing Thomas Sankara. But there's someone who is of the opposite of corruption, which is integrity. Even when he controls a country of vast resources and stood to gain personally in a material sense, in a financial sense, he was able to look beyond that to his higher values about the value to the wider people. And I think that's my question to you is, when we have these people that come across, how can we protect them? How can we ensure that they're not just knocked off like we've seen time and time again? Like you said, like it feels like this is all downstream of Patrice Lumumba being assassinated, 40 years ago in the Congo. How can we stop that?
Well, first of all, you need to codify and institutionalize this and not let it rest on the arms of, although they're giants, individual men. Okay. Systems last longer than individuals. And the idea is that you're supposed to create the system. So whichever individual's there, they can't be bigger than that. Number two, it's be realistic about what the journey looks like and the price we pay. And this is talking from privilege. We're sitting here, by God's grace, there's no bombs sitting here. We're not in that immediate danger. But the path to victory, the path to independence, real independence for Africa, for Global South, will involve violence. And I don't promote violence. I don't condone it. But if you're going to try and circumvent that and downplay what that requires, then that will always be your price. Your price. Fanon's
idea that decolonialism is inherently violent because you're replacing a set of people with a different set of people.
So your price to avoid violence means that you will always exchange everything for security. And sometimes do you get what I'm saying? It's like, that means security is always going to be the bargaining chip they can use. Because if you're so scared of violence, all I'm going to do is be like, okay, to stop violence, let's do this. But violence also, when you have all these deals like the Washington Accords and stuff, it doesn't get to the root of the issue. The root of the issue between Rwanda and Congo isn't necessarily only resource. Obviously, that's the object that they're extracting, but it's also a disconnected Africa, an Africa that there's no Pan-Africanism. There's no idea that like my African neighbor's voice is more powerful and more influential over me than somebody who doesn't come from the continent or a power outside of the continent. That's the problem. The problem is it takes America to come and do the short term. We already know they're playing in our faces and this is nothing. It's not going to amount to anything. What they're trying to do is secure peace around the areas they're going to extract from. Everywhere else, it's just rediverting the violence anyway. So that's what we need. We need a strong sense of Pan-Africanism and in sense of self-esteem. It's a self-esteem issue.
Okay, and even
self-esteem issue.
I even want to motivate for some of our listeners why we're talking about this. And I don't know if Global South is even the politically correct word to use, but
I know there's so many. But
we'll stick with that for now because I think people can interpret what I mean by that. But maybe for our listeners at home who are the Marxists among us, who Sean said he wasn't part of you, but people that are of the left wing. We speak a lot about the class antagonism that's involved in capitalism. And because of the advent of globalization post-World War II, what people need to be abundantly aware of is a lot of that class antagonism has been obscured and actually abstracted from the countries we live in like the West and the global North, whereby we might see ourselves as undergoing this class antagonism between ourselves and the landlords in our country. But in fact, the chain of production has been globalized such that the real proletariat within this economic system where we're all actually interacting are in different continents. Are actually people that are existing as the real sort of bottom of the rung being exploited by the whole global system of capitalism rather than us who live in this information economy in London or UK or France or wherever you're listening from. Remember to leave a comment. You know what I mean?
No, 100%. But that's the idea of like nationalism and all that kind of stuff. It's trying to make a world that you benefit from globally invisible. So you just think about your local issues and now it's our border. Our border's the only thing. Now you don't even want to know why people are coming over here in small boats. It doesn't matter to you.
Yeah, so, because you also don't realize like the actual, like the nature of globalization. And perhaps people at home, someone in the comments when I've said I like Eddie Dempsey, they said, I don't like Eddie Dempsey because he was a Brexiteer. Right. And famously, sort of the downfall of Jeremy Corbyn was him saying he was like 7 out of 10 on staying in the European Union. But a reason why a lot of these left-wing socialist Marxist figures are skeptical of sort of economic unionization transnationally is because they see it as a route to globalization whereby workers are treated as sort of, it undermines worker power, let's put it that way. And when we look at the treatment of people in the Congo, we look at the sort of exploitation of people in Rwanda or in southern Asia in a lot of parts, we see where they're coming from really. Because it now means that whole countries just become rungs on a manufacturing chain rather than sovereign countries that need to sort of have some level of self-sustainability. Specialization of labor, they'll call it. You know what I mean? But
also, and add to that as well, particularly for Britain, we say the West, but Britain, there's no honesty about where your wealth comes from. This is why discussing the world in a global context creates that anxiety. Because when you do that, you have to kind of position yourself and go, okay, why are we where we are? And we kind of know the story about reform. not necessarily the voters themselves, but the rhetoric around it, which is you genuinely thought there was an intrinsic superiority of the British economic story, and therefore you're angry about returning to a time where you were these, but it was like, no, the people coming in small boats historically were part of an empire that actually, upheld you, and till to this day, the legacy upholds you. So I think globalization, yes, for all the things you mentioned, but also particularly as a British phenomenon, the sun never set on the British Empire. You don't want to acknowledge that. You don't want to acknowledge where this comes from. And so it's easy to go, I'm only looking here because that's where the wealth is. And this is...
That's a bar, though.
What is?
The sun will never set on the British Empire. Say what you want.
They come up with these things. They need little jingles to keep it going.
Cold. But we'll leave it there. When you talk about these kind of topics, it's just like kind of get a headache because it feels so insurmountable.
Yeah.
That's why even on my part, like me and Sean say we're here to push political imagination. It's difficult for us as well.
Yeah.
Because only through discourse and through actually activity within these, bringing up these problematic topics that are kind of hard to even wrap your head around, that over time you can come to develop solutions.
Yeah, but heavy is the head, man. Heavy is the head.
You got bars for days. But we'll leave it there for the state of play. Get into some back roads.
Nice.
Welcome to the back roads. There's the section where we take it off the mains and we start to look at the topics that perhaps we've just come up with or are less spoken about. This week, obviously, Sean's away for the month. People are saying that 2026 we're going to Brazil. He's obviously gone to Mogadishu. He thought that was the step. So he's in Somalia, Mogadishu right now, bringing in the new year. But what that also means is that he isn't able to save money on the tube. Because, Sean, notorious tube bumper, he would be saving an extra 5.8%. Because unfortunately, even though there's been a train rail fare freeze, in London, tube prices are going to go up by 5.8%, above inflation. Honestly, I've got my policy that we're going to solve this.
You got a policy for it?
But Busayo, I want to throw it to you. What do you think about this? Londoner.
It's rough out here, man. Before, I promise you, up until maybe like 2020, 2021, I was tapping my card, my contactless, like it was nothing. I was even thinking it was kind of free. You didn't really see it, maybe one, two, but I think it was calm.
Yeah.
In the middle of the night when they start to take out £8, £7. Yeah. The one that gets me is the one when you go from the overground and then you have to go to underground and you never know whether to tap in, tap out.
You got to tap the thing there. And...
But realistic, honestly, it's sad. It's sad. Londoners are really stressed. I know we don't get good press because, it's always London centric, our politics and stuff. But it's not easy here. It's too much, I think. You want us to get back into the office, but you've made it really expensive for us to do that. You want us to have some sort of social life, so then when we get back into the office, we're happy, we're motivated, but you made it so expensive for us to see our friends. You want to address the male loneliness epidemic? How? No ball games. No one's playing ball games in the area. There's nowhere to go that is within walking distance where I can actually enjoy myself, and work is remote. I just think it doesn't make sense. And
we talk about this a bit on the show where it's like Labour's talking about this productivity stuff, growth, but you're pursuing policies that are actively anti-growth. You're making it more expensive for people to go to university. You're making it more expensive for people to get to school, people to get to their work, people to enrich themselves outside of work so they're able to be more productive individuals in work. I also think, my policy is this. One, I've always said school kids should not be paying for, people under 18 should not be paying for like tube or rail or bus between like 7 a.m., whatever the times kids go to school is. They shouldn't be paying for that. Because like I said, it's a tax on people going to school. Yeah. The other thing is, charge the tourists, man.
Oh, are you anti-tourist?
I'm not anti-tourist yet. I'm not anti-tourist at all.
Okay.
But jack up the tourist fees and freeze our fees. Because I think it's just like they're coming here and they're buying into our system. Yeah, pay your fair share.
You're sounding kind of Nigel Farage.
No, it's not. I want you to be here, but just
pay your way.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, the reason tourists are here is for the Londoners. We're the vibe. They're coming here because of the Londoners and because of the history that's been created here. Let that be able to offset the cost for Londoners to carry on being Londoners.
How much are you talking about? £1, £2, or are you talking about like you need like a £10?
Nah, nothing crazy, but whatever needs to be done. 5.8%? Put 10% on the tourists. Obviously, proportionally less tourists, but put 10% on the tourists or whatever that would take. 20% on the tourists even. Make them pay £6 versus £4 for a rail fare.
Fair.
They're not going to notice it, and they're in London. They know it's expensive. They're going to be paying more anyway.
Because only the rich are essentially coming and
traveling anyway.
Yeah,
but I just think it's just disappointing.
It's so disappointing. I just think it's just that's all it is. It's disappointing. And I know there was some like discourse around like how they actually needed to bail TFL out, all that kind of stuff. So I'm sure there's someone out there with their workings out going, it's really expensive. If you know how much to do, cool. But some things just that are expensive just have to be subsidized and made cheap for people. And this is why I don't get this is my rant bit. Yeah, is that I am not of the belief that, and it's quite separate, but I'm not of the belief that the business class are the primary generators of wealth. I don't believe that.
What do you mean by business class? Like, I'm with you, but I think...
Not business class. I don't think that... Basically, actually, let me reframe that. I don't think that our political, economic policy should focus on business growth.
Okay, land, but I think
I don't think we should like be focusing on reducing taxes for businesses so it makes it easier for them to whatever increase their supply chains, whatever it is that's part of that, whatever the excuse they give. I personally believe that it's us workers that generate wealth. And if we are not happy and healthy, that we can't travel around cheaply, you don't invest in our public services, then what is it? And it will come at a price, but you have to pay that price. I don't think there will ever be a time, personally for me, where it makes sense money-wise, where it's like, oh, take the L. I don't see why this whole profit-seeking idea. There will be a time where you have to do the right thing. And the right thing is, which we saw in COVID, you found money from somewhere. And this is the kind of thing we're talking about with the Labour Party in terms of when I mean like business first, is that you always try to appease the business class. You water things down because they fight back and they say, oh my God, we'll leave if you do this, or you're going to make it hard for us to set up businesses.
One of my favourite rappers is Stove God Cooks.
Who's that?
Brilliant rapper from coming out of Syracuse in New York. On his recent single, Goat Stamp, he says, soon as you see money on the branch, you fuck around and cut the whole tree. And we look at Labour policy when it comes to the TfL stuff or where they're penny pinching here and there on income tax or national insurance tax. It's like, no. You need to stop trying to balance the budget year on year and look for long-term growth, which obviously our system of like 5-year incumbency isn't attuned to, so we can actually grow something larger long-term to improve people's lives. So yeah, maybe TfL's running a deficit for the next 4 years, but the productivity that allows people to, or the improvement in life quality that allows for people to achieve is far greater. And the goals, it's easy for politicians. The politicians love numbers because they're an easy way to show accountability. Or I did this because the numbers said so. So even if your life got worse, but the numbers said so. Well, how about you focus on maybe the more abstract notion of improving my quality of life? We might not be able to metricize as easily as GDP, but it's actually fundamentally more important and a worthy cause.
But when has the numbers ever proven their point? This is my thing. If
in the short term. It's short term.
But what happens in the short term? The short term is their announcement. For me, the short term is being able to tell somebody that I've done this. That is all it is. The short term in what happens. And that's why I feel like even by their own logic, what have you achieved by doing all this stuff? If you can borrow, you're borrowing, protecting the class that you want to protect, and our living standards are down. Why don't you just borrow and invest in us and let it still be down?
Can I even say something on like political animation? There's a good opportunity now for all you young Londoners, you hoodlums. You hoodlums at home, there's a chance to put like your skills of bumping train to use. Allegedly, Northstar Politics is not endorsing this, but allegedly, this could be a good time for you to strike. Start bumping trains, and now I feel like there's a bit of political backing to what you're doing. It's now an ideological mission when you jump that barrier.
There's a lady that I saw online. I don't know her name, but she's kind of become famous for like going around doing a tour, telling people how they don't have to pay council tax and how she doesn't pay everything, or she like charges it back and stuff like that.
We need to get her on the pod.
And I was like,
she's not giving the keys. Fair play.
But remember, not all of us can get away with them.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Allegations. All allegations at the end of the day. We need to talk about The Rest is Politics.
Yes, sir.
So people at home probably haven't heard of The Rest is Politics. Pretty small podcast compared to the behemoth of Northstar Politics. But it's the biggest podcast in the UK. And it's run by Alistair Campbell, former head of comms for the Blair years in Labour, and Rory Stewart, former Conservative minister, suspect MI6 agent at some point. Everyone thinks he's an MI6 agent.
His stories are wild.
Yeah, diplomat, all that kind of jazz. And recently, he had Zach Polansky on, and Zach Polansky was asked to give like the economic backing or economic theorists that back his work. And he referenced someone I like, Richard J. Murphy, Grace Blakely, James Medway, and Gary Stevenson. Gary Stevenson, we had a bit of tension because you said something back in the day, but I got so much love for Gary Stevenson. And Rory
said that every episode, you know.
Is it? I got so much love for him. Gary, you literally need to come on. You literally need to come on the pod. I got too much love for you. Fellow East End resident. But Rory Stewart basically said, these are not serious academics. These are not serious economists. And he pressed Zach Polansky for, can you give me anyone with like a postgraduate qualification in economics or academic standing in economics that is backing your work? And there was a bit back and forth with Gary Stevenson online, because Gary Stevenson was like, well, I've got actually an MPhil from Oxford in economics.
He posted it, innit?
Yeah, he posted it, demanded an apology. Rory apologised. And cool, drama in the political space. The thing I wanted to bring out, though, is what underpins Rory's demands. And this is the very, very epitome of conservatism. So what Rory demanded from Zach Polansky is, I need your understanding of economics to be supported by people that are conventionally indoctrinated within the tradition of modern neoliberal, neoclassical economics.
Facts.
This is how conservatism perpetuates itself. You are only able to critique the economic system we have if you are fully immersed in it.
Yeah.
This is how things keep on self-perpetuating, rather than asking for someone who has maybe a plurality of understanding or a different perspective to come in and critique it. If we are living in an age of an endemic problem of, let's call it immiseration, wealth inequality, is it rational for the same people that are of the doctrine that produced it to be the ones that are going to solve it?
No.
And in Rory Stewart asking this question, it kind of betrays that conservatism and the problem with it.
For me, when I saw that, and I saw some of the back and forth, and I didn't know Rory apologized, and that's what the power of the internet. But yeah, it's like the old guard. They've shown not capital A age, but they've shown how obsolete they are, how the centre has become obsolete. You're out of touch. You fear new energy. And obviously the class angle is there. I know they tried to make it a class anger thing, but you are disgusted by the fact that you are sharing a space, a landscape with people that you would have sunned previously. What I do appreciate about that exchange, as I mentioned earlier before, is that it's between one kind of demographic, although there's the intersection of class. Because if we made those same statements, it would be, we're extreme left wing and stuff like that. This is somebody who's walked your walk, talked your talk, done everything you told them to do apart from being born where you wanted to be born, and they've come out with a different viewpoint. What Gary has done, and what the question that Rory poses suggests, is how did you get to that conclusion following the journey you took? Because they made us believe that if you go to these universities that we went to, or those schools, or you did the masters or go to these jobs, there's only one way to look at society. And so Gary Economics exposes the fact that, no, this was a choice. You had a choice to see all these things, but you chose that way. And then, of course, it's just a young person out there who's kind of is relatable and, you know.
The rest is politics, man. Like Alistair Campbell, Rory Stewart, I call them, man, they're stewards of the status quo.
Of course.
And they're fearful of people like Gary's Economics, because what Gary's Economics represents is a change in power bases, a change. And you get that phrase all the time. It's like, if you are empowered or if you are privileged, then equality will feel like punishment. And someone like Rory Stewart fundamentally is incapable of looking outside of the structure within which he has developed his thinking. Therefore, when he hears of someone like Richard J. Murphy, who's an accountant, or Grace Blakely, who's primarily a Marxist, and then beyond that looks at capitalism, analyzes it, his understanding of what it means to be someone who has authority to speak on economics is you need to be fully indoctrinated in what I understand economics to be. It's one of the great benefits of what postmodernist thinking unpacked for us. And postmodernist is a poor term, but the umbrella term for like sort of mid 20th century French thinkers, be it Foucault, be it Derrida, be it Sartre, be it de Beauvoir, is that any piece of information that people are espousing as objective is produced in some place by someone for some purpose. So when Rory Stewart levies against Zach Polanski and Gary Stevenson that you are not proper economists, therefore do not have authority on this notion of a proper economist isn't neutral, it isn't value neutral, it is entirely laden with Rory Stewart's beliefs that he's been brought up in about what propriety is. So someone like Gary's Economics, like you say, literally has more postgraduate qualifications than Rory Stewart does, and is more of an economist than Rory Stewart ever could be. Rory Stewart literally has sort of let the mask slip. And despite the facts of the matter, because of your upbringing, because of who you are, because of how you talk, because of your opinions, for me, you just aren't a proper economist.
This is what the centre is. The centre likes being the centre when there's a right, because it makes you look like the common sense group. It makes you look even left-wing to people who can't tell the difference, who don't look on the other side of you. But people like Gary or Zach, they expose your positioning on the spectrum, and now you have to end up defending your position, because when you talk to other people, even if you think about their podcast is supposed to come from the angle of, we are kind of like the empathetic guys of this establishment. Like, we can see things. We've got the privilege of hindsight, so I can talk about things that I did wrong. But also, Rory's whole idea was that he was the nice Tory. Wasn't his whole angle was that he was the kind of common sense Tory.
When he was running for mayor of London, he was doing sleepovers at people's yards and things.
You know, and that's all cute because that's the performative side. But as you said, the mask slips when you have someone who's like, okay, let's take it further. Are you against inequality, or do you like narrating about inequality? And now we've seen it, and now we understand, thank you, for all the flaws that are still existing in you know, I do like Gary Economics. And again, from an intersectional point of view, it might not capture everything, but he serves a great purpose, which is, when white men are talking, it's really easy for them to discredit people of color, to discredit women, to discredit anyone they don't think is equal to them. When white people are having this disagreement, I think it's really important and really powerful, because it takes away the distraction from the argument. We could have said all these other things, or how did you feel? No, he went to all these schools, he did all that kind of stuff. Now you have to try and find it. So yeah, honestly, I just think, for me, I would
say, big up Gary Stevenson, Rory Stewart, you're scrambling.
Yeah, like, you know, you're not going to listen. The rest is politics.
Exactly. So, Busayo, you've got a show called Everything's Political.
Yes, sir.
I love the show. People at home need to go watch the show. They can find you everywhere, like Busayo Twins.
Yes.
Yeah? I'm going to throw some topics at you, and I want you to tell me how they're political. And honestly, yeah, because I like the show so much, yeah, this is going to be a bit tricky. It's not going to be easy.
It's not going to be easy because now I'm like,
Okay, first one. You see me. You see what I'm rocking, innit?
I know.
You see me in my quarter zip,
and there's something green in your cup
do
there.
you know what I mean? I'm here. I'm chilling in my quarter zip and all them kind of thing there.
Yeah, sorry.
Why are quarter zips political, and the recent trend around quarter zips?
It's political. So from what I've seen, obviously, it's mostly Gen Z that are leading in this. But, sometimes my zillennial self can see the timeline. I think it's about who the person who normally wears that attire is in society and how they navigate their status. And even in terms of even romantic relationships and stuff, it kind of seems like an aspirational partner to have. Someone who looks like they've got a serious job. If they've got a serious job, they are valued more. They've got more important things to say. Versus, and the idea is that versus those who are probably in the night tech fleets, who we stereotype as being people from here, from the ends, maybe doing something illegal, doing something that isn't worthy of praise, something that is just basically your life is not on the right path. And the reason why that is political, because it shows how clothes are supposed to signal your status in society as part of the performance of like, both of you can have no qualifications, have similar qualifications, but your attire alone will determine how society treats you. It's only then when you open your mouth that you can kind of challenge that. So I think that's what I do like about the discourse, whether it's intentional or not. The politics in there is actually how much more will your life or experience change just by wearing something different.
I agree. And I think sometimes it's important for people to motivate their thinking. If there is no material difference, like literally there's no material difference in what I'm wearing versus me wearing a Nike Tech fleece, why does there feel like a difference? What are the connotations that I've attached to these items of clothing or whatever it might be that make there's a substantive difference in how it might be treated or perceived? And that's where we can unpack our like prejudices and these sorts of things. I like that. Next one, people forcing slang. And what I'm thinking of here is someone where,
I want you to say this question with all the slang that you know. I want this question.
Should I bring
and it's yo, basically my question is.
You know what my thing is? I'm kind of like, middle class, working class intersection where I went private school for like 3 years in primary school.
Confession.
I'm proud of that. I grew up in East London. It's just like, I think I've got a different register from maybe a lot of people where you meet people that are totally outside of that slang and also from East London, went to school in West London. But when you hear someone and they're speaking in a way where it's just like, this just ain't natural. Like you're just throwing in words, it's sounding abzocky, it's all a bit weird. Why is that political?
It's political because it's kind of like the cultural appropriation, which is you want to experience the nice side of, or the cultural side of oppressive groups or their experiences, but you don't want to subjugate yourself to their material realities. So it's like you tap in and tap out of people's cultures, which creates this false sense of allyship. But when it comes to actually then, changing policies or advocating for them, you suddenly disappear. So it's that false sense of like, are you my friend? Are you not my friend? And outside of that as well, it's kind of just like, it infantilizes those demographics as well. It makes you feel like you can just come in and speak a certain way because it's fun, it's entertaining to you. But then you go back and then, you fill up your mouth with all the grammar from the dictionary.
But even I sometimes think that slang isn't even really about like class dynamics necessarily. It's just about like localities. So sometimes the reason why I just get so annoyed when people are forcing like slang that is just not natural to them is because I like the idea that you go to different places, you hear different slang. Like, I remember like my family's from Manchester on my white side. When I was younger, when I got to Manchester, like my family friends there would be telling me, oh, trek. Like trek. But obviously now we say that in London, like it's a trek. Yeah. But when I was younger, we didn't used to say that. It was a Manchester thing. And I like that there was like a
So you're talking about different slangs.
Yeah, so I even think obviously there's a level of like class sort of weirdness. I also think just on a personal level, it's just weird if you're just fronting. You're just pretending to be someone you're not.
Yeah, of course. It's course. And again, it's kind of similar to what we said before. It's why do you feel like you need to use that? What privileges or what benefits do you have by using slang? Which is, although, the people that you might kind of appropriate their language might be in existing, whatever, in that space and in that time, you felt like there was some sort of benefit.
Yeah.
And that's whatever benefit is to you, felt it was some sort of benefit. Or sometimes people just do it because they can. And with social media, with mass media, some people don't even, you're being raised by the internet as much.
You're kind of caricaturing something that you're not.
You are, but you also don't always know it. So that's the like That's
you
like
see the lights coming in and you
sinister
think that means what you're doing is good.
Yeah, but then how many times are we going to get, some of our favorite artists to number one and not think that people are going to digest that slang and use it in everyday life? That slang no longer is necessarily a representative of where you're from. And I think that's where people can get very protective of slang and question it. But naturally, over time, I think people, when I hear the Queen talk sometimes in the old video, obviously, no longer alive.
Rest in peace. Stay free, get Lizzie.
That English is mad. That's like some like.
That's how my nan
that English is that English is not even the English they're using now in the middle class. That English is I don't even know.
Different.
So
Right, last one. Me, I'm struggling to grow a full beard. Why is that political?
Why is it political that you can't grow a beard?
Fluoride in the water.
Yeah, it could be.
5G in the towers.
It could be. It could be that where you live, you know, they don't look after your beard where you live. You can't. I don't know what it is. What you eating? What shops? What food is in the shops?
Whole Foods,
local.
you know, I'm eating like
Whole Foods here.
I'm not going Whole Foods shop, but I'm eating like Whole Foods.
Oh, you're eating Whole Foods. You're trying everything.
But you know what it is, yeah? But you had bare answers for the first two. We're saying I'm hopeless.
I was trying to think about it, and I realised I don't think it's a political answer. I think this is the only topic that isn't political.
It's
circumstantial.
Show cancelled. Everything's not political.
Yeah, everything is not political.
I thought there was gonna be an answer.
No, everything is political. Everyone.
Okay.
Actually, everyone is political.
Okay.
But yeah, no, I don't know. Actually, what do you think? Actually?
You know what I was thinking for? I thought more you were gonna help me out and say, you know, it's a posture in masculinity and it's actually not necessary and genetically but you're just thinking that I'm just cooked.
Or did you need that? Is it something that you needed?
Nah, I never cared.
Yeah. No, it's just not for you.
Fair play. I guess it's not
just
political
not for you,
then.
Yeah.
It's just my cross to bear. We're gonna get into a Let Me Land.
Okay.
Are you ready for this?
Am I ready for a Let Me Land?
You're gonna find out.
Yes, sir. I think Nigel Farage should be the next Prime Minister.
Crazy. I'm lost for words. Busayo, yeah. We've seen people try and land some sketchy planes. I need you to unpack this.
But put the disclaimer first. Like, put the disclaimer.
No, I can't lie. Like, we're trying to go viral. Okay. No disclaimers, no nothing. Talk to me. Unpack that for me, please.
Basically, I don't believe that the British public is angry enough about how things are going. And I don't think theory or the threat of reform is strong enough to get us organised, as we've seen by your party, as we've seen by the shaky, aren't they coalition with the Green Party. So I feel like once Nigel Farage is Prime Minister, that will do more to strengthen the left, because you will be faced with the need to partner together to get him out. You would also develop your sense of strategy. I think right now the left, it's all about, the purity politics of who's got the best idea and, the 10 marks to be like, this is how we do things. But strategy is a big thing. But if you talk about strategy with the left, you are then seen as centrist because now you're forsaking, the bigger ideology. But I think, and then lastly, a country like this needs to know the truth. Everything he says, let him have the power to do it. And when things do not change, we've left no stone unturned, and now we can really face what we need to face.
As they say in the Caribbean, if you don't hear, you must feel. I hear you, but I don't feel you.
You don't feel me. Go, let's go.
I'm feeling you on that one.
Let's go.
I think, this isn't necessarily the end. I know right now Nigel Farage is kind of framed as the end of the political spectrum. So it seems like you're saying, let's take it to the end, and then you'll realise the end's not right, so we head to the other end. But I think what we'll realise is you head to Nigel Farage, just like we thought maybe like Boris Johnson was the end, Liz Truss was the end, even Cameron was the end, like George Osborne austerity level was the end. It's like, no, it keeps going further. So what Boris Johnson gets in, and I don't know who that clown is that runs around like he's the new UKIP guy, and he's like, whatever, I don't even know who he is.
Yeah, no,
but he's some Italian guy. Yeah. It's like, so Farage gets in, it doesn't work. I could see what's going further down that rabbit hole. I mean, Tommy Robinson, Stephen and Yaxley Lennon still kicking around every now and then. Like, I don't think there's anything preventing us from going there. The other thing I'll say is perhaps you're speaking from a level of privilege, which I'm a bit surprised about. Because you as a black woman, you stand to suffer immeasurably on a material level from like literal threat of violence from this. So whereas I can imagine someone like, a sort of middle-class left-wing person saying this. It's like, we need to go through this to then get us back to like socialism or back to like some sort of market socialism, fully aware that them as like sort of a middle-class white socialist will go through none of like the sort of the worst of a Farage premiership. So I'm a bit worried about that side. So those are my two starting
which I and obviously that totally makes sense. I think there's a familiarity with violence and oppression and fascism that black women understand and know.
So you're saying just run it. Like, I'm ready.
It's not saying just run it, because obviously there's a sensitivity here, and this is obviously a Let Me Land take. So it's like you can see the point I'm trying to make. But the idea is that Britain will not stop at black women's pain. It's not the metric for you to change your politics. So why would I pretend that something that can impact me will be something that changes Britain's mind? Both in the fact that the number of us as ethnic minorities in this country, where are we now? 3%, 4%? What is it now? Something like that, or who knows? That is not enough numbers.
I think it's 13%.
13%?
Yeah. Let's check. Well,
I don't even know. I can't remember now.
But keep going.
But yeah, so basically the point is that it's not enough. If Britain doesn't care if black women are upset, so I'm not the metric of how much more or worse I can experience it to change things. It's genuinely about the material conditions of, right now, the reform voters who, in all fairness to them, they're saying things haven't changed. And you've identified small boats, you've identified X, Y, Z as the issues. Now the people in power address those things. Those things haven't changed. We have to give them the opportunity, obviously to let me land, for them to be betrayed. Obviously we had the Brexit, but that seems like a very ideological big thing that it's hard to translate.
I guess I wonder, like, is there a way to convince people that it isn't going to work without having to go through it?
But this is where we are.
I know.
So my point is that, trust me, I'm not saying this in a way where I welcome it. Obviously we live in fear. We've lived in fear 10 years ago. This is not even new. Right now, it's more like, oh, so now you're upset. You want me to add my voice to yours to make it intersectional. But at the end of the day, we're living in it. How far do you want to? How far are we going to go? What I'm saying is that it has to go far. And you're right. Farage might not be the end. But whatever that side is, he's not going to be the end.
But where do we take it then?
No, but where have we been in society?
What I'm saying, if Farage gets in,
yeah,
and like we're sat on Northstar politics 4 years from now, and it's like
we're off air. You're off air.
Yeah, the Farage is taking our mics.
Underground Pirate Radio.
But Underground Pirate Radio, Northstar, and then would you come back and say people haven't clocked it? It's not going to work. We need to take it further.
No, but what will you do if realistically? I don't know what the number is. Is it 11% now, 13%, 15%? 18.
We're taking over.
18. I don't know. I got that 1%. Maybe that's LSE numbers. I don't know. But yeah, like at the end of the day, numbers wise, can you trust the rest of Britain to defend the things that are important to you?
Yeah.
Can you? Numbers wise alone, it's a bit risky. Why are we pretending? What exactly are we waiting for? Who is it? Is it that third that we keep saying is the undecided third who just needs to be? What is it? So we're already in a situation where we can't be naive about what it's going to take for people's minds to change. And it's not us. We have the normalization of black and brown bodies. Again, not sure if the terminology is correct, but black and brown bodies being oppressed, suffering, shouting, has not changed the course of British history. It hasn't. That's why right now we have to now focus. That's why now I know your Lord and Saviour, Gary Stevenson, focused on talking, started talking about, we shouldn't really, be so angry with reform because not all of them are racist. They're just blindly following. These are adults, by the way. These are not children. These are adults, grown adults. And obviously he's removed the idea that some people can just be racist, not saying they all are. So we've had to now mollycoddle this movement and be like, I know it's your first time here. It's your first time here on the margins with a now go. This is where we are. So for me, it's like, what is the alternative? If right now the threat of reform hasn't got us up, striking, dodging train fares and all that kind of stuff, what is it? What will it be?
I see. The thing why I'm so pessimistic is because I think structurally British politics, no matter who's incumbent at the moment, will not produce solutions that people feel. And there's kind of what Marx predicts in The Immiseration of the Masses, is that year on year, stuff will just keep on getting worse and worse because the upper class, the capitalist class, are going to extract wealth and extract sort of value from the proletariat, from the working class. And irrespective, and they'll basically essentially co-opt the government as a means to do this. And we've seen that with like the Conservative government into the Labour government. They're all basically just neoliberal institutions under a different facade. So I don't disagree with you that people must feel because they won't hear. But I'm just skeptical about the viability of this, one, being an end, and two, it being a worthwhile end, even if it was.
Yeah.
Because the amount of suffering people would have to go through, the amount of violence, people are literally, literally, the summer before last, mobs outside asylum hotels trying to burn them down.
Yeah, but we're also...
While Labour in power.
Exactly, but we're also in a generation of at least 3 concurrent live stream genocides happening. This is... I think people don't realise the times we're in.
Why do people not care anymore?
Because it's normal, like, you've desensitized to it. You've shown us that I still have to go to work on Monday after a genocide. It didn't stop the world. But then how
would like a Farage premiership where shit just hits the fan, how would that change anything? Why wouldn't we just desensitize to that?
It's mainly helping us to, as I said, number one, strategically, the left, it should help them with strategy. Right now, we're on ideology. Right now, this is the contention with the Your Party and the Greens is mostly like the Your Party saying ideologically they are more socialist, they've got all these things together, and Greens are just being like opportunists and they're a broad church. We don't even know what you're doing, but strategically, it makes sense to support the Greens right now, right? So we're in this weird space where it's like strategy over ideology. Do you have time? Do you not have time? When you have the beast in power that you think is the greatest issue, and don't get me wrong, all of them kind of are saying, let's get Nigel Farage out of number 10 or not, we have to stop reform. That is their politics. But regardless of what they're saying, the tenets of their parties are, the rhetoric from the leaders are, let's stop reform. So now reform's in. For the left, you've said let's stop reform, so what are we doing now? For those of you who said that everything that Nigel Farage, what he represents is good for the country, okay, he's there now, hasn't done it, so what now? At least, if anything, it removes those talking points.
It's also something, I guess, kind of like a moderator of what Nigel Farage would be capable to do is that neoliberal capture of government. In the same way we've kind of seen with Trump, is Trump's never really been able to do the extreme of what his rhetoric was before he came to office because of that neoliberal capture of statehood or of the government. So I don't know.
And also what I'm looking forward to, if you can look forward to anything, is when people realise that he has obviously sold us out to the global elite class. That is something I feel like...
We're just making a 51st state.
We're waiting now because you've obviously got this like rich man who's obviously cosplaying as this like working class person or working class advocate. And they're like, okay, he talks like us. Oh, when you get over representation politics anyway, forget even that he's not even where he's from. When you get over that charisma and he's in power and you realise that he sold your data to America. Or now America's making your decisions. Oh, now we have to pledge our allegiance to certain states.
The big one I always think is like, literally the UK doesn't have a nuclear deterrent without America say so. We don't have an independent nuclear deterrent. But that's beside the point at the moment. I think that is an interesting let me land. I thought I'd be able to just like rebut it, but I'm half with you.
Be honest.
People at home, you got to let us know.
Just
People
be
at
honest.
home, get in the comments, let us know if you think Busayo landed that one.
Disclaimer, obviously.
No, we don't do disclaimers around here.
No, I was just going to say obviously full stop. But yeah.
There we go.
In the comments.
Let us know in the comments if Busayo landed that one.
And don't be a contrarian.
Busayo, your first episode on Northstar Politics. How did you find it?
Is there going to be more?
I hope so.
I hope so. No, it's been amazing. Thank you so much.
I honestly enjoyed that so much. This is my first time doing it without Sean here.
Oh, how do you feel? Do you feel held?
I feel like we had a good time. I feel like we got into some avenues that we couldn't otherwise. Hopefully Sean gets the good viewer experience at home. Sean, shout out you or you're watching at home.
Yeah, shout out.
You better be watching.
And when you go home, look in the mirror, blink 3 times, and I think might get something growing.
Well, you think?
You know what I mean?
You think the beard might get political?
I feel like I heard it.
Everyone at home, you need to go follow Busayo Twins everywhere. It will not be a waste of a follow. Also, my people at home, if you got it to this far, you are a real star. Yes. You really are soldiers of the stars, them. So I need you to like, comment, review us on Spotify, review us on Apple Podcasts, all that kind of jazz. The comment for the week is let us know where you're listening from. I'm trying to hear where you're listening from. We're recording from Boaty, Freetown, Hamlet, Stand Up.
So we're doing postcodes.
If you want to do the postcode for out
cool.
there, like Elijah said, you can't say Bo without the E3.
Fair enough.
So that's why I always Bo E3. But wherever you're listening from, let us know. I know we've got listeners in Cuba.
Yeah. Oh, is it?
Yeah, I got friends in Cuba that listen.
Look at you.
My boy was in Syria a couple of weeks ago listening from out there. We've got listeners in Namibia as well.
Lovely.
Shout out Franz Haita.
Okay.
Yeah, black Namibian. I don't know if he voted for the recent politician Adolf Hitler. I doubt he did. So shout out Franz.
You got no supporters in Namibia now.
But we'll leave it there for today. Busayo Twins, thank you so much.